Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Bluestone at Home. And this week we're going to talk about our hybrid grapes that we have here at Bluestone. We have 4 that we're going to be going through this week, 2 whites and 2 reds. And so we're going to start with our Vidal Blanc. And a little bit about Vidal Blanc. So Vidal Blanc is actually a hybrid of Uni Blanc or Trebbiano, as known as it in Italy, and Rayon d'Or. And so it was created back in the 1930s by Jean-Louis Vidal in France. And he developed it as a potential variety to use in cognac production. But even though it was created in France, it's actually no longer an authorized grape in France, and very few plantings are still there today. However, it is seen throughout the U.S. It's a really great grape. It's suited for not only dry styles, but for sweeter styles as well, including ice wines and dessert wines. So let's talk a little bit about our Vidal. Now, this is our 2019 vintage, and this was the first wine that we did have for screw caps. So really excited about this one. I really love just the light, refreshing, clean, crisp feel of Vidal Blanc, but this one especially, this one on the nose, it's got a lot of like minerality to it. It's just very fresh, very clean. And this one, like on the palate, when you taste it, it's one of those that you just want to keep drinking more of. Really love this wine. This one we also do have in our canned wine, in our cans now as well. And this one was aged in stainless steel, so definitely that light, refreshing kind of feel to it. Let's see, what else are in my notes? But yeah, as I mentioned, I just want to just keep drinking it, so I'm going to do that. Now on to our next white, we're going to move on to Traminette. And Traminette, as many of you know, its parentage is with a grape that is very difficult to pronounce and took me a very long time to master how to say it. It has a parent grape of the Gewürztraminer grape. And so it carries a lot of the similar qualities of its parent grape, including the spiciness, the floral notes, especially the floral notes, all the floral. And it's also a very hearty grape as well. Now, Traminette was developed in the 60s, and it started out its development at the University of Illinois, but then it ended up at Cornell to continue the rest of the development and process and things like that. Now, as I mentioned in our last episode, how our blue ice uses Traminette, but we do also have the dry Traminette as well, and that's what I'm opening up now. So the fruit was sourced from both here at Bluestone. We do grow Traminette here on the property, as well as some of the fruit came from our friends over at Silver Creek as well. This one was aged in stainless steel. Now, oftentimes, Traminette does have a little bit of sweetness to it. It is often a fairly big wine, and a little sweetness is good to kind of help balance it out a little bit. But in recent years, Lee has made the Traminette more into a dry wine, and the alcohol is also a little bit lower on this one, about 11.9 ABV. So I'll be honest, I've not had this one for a while, so I'm excited to give it a go. Yeah, floral, all the floral. A lot of like rose petal and a little bit of white flower as well, like a little bit of honeysuckle, and things like that. And that is one of the neat things when people are doing tastings, is that because Traminette is very, very distinct, a lot of people can typically point them out very quickly in tastings. Still get a little bit of the floral in the finish, a little bit of spiciness as well. It is dry, but it's not bone dry, to where it still has a little bit of softness to it. Definitely just the easygoing nature of it. Let's see. What else? I'm losing my trail of thought. You can cut all this out. But yeah, Traminette is a really great one to do. You can pair it with spicier dishes, especially, you know, ours, you know, even though it doesn't have as much of the sweetness that some typically do, you can still pair this one with spicier dishes or things like that. Now we're going to move on to our red hybrids, and we're going to move to our Chambourcin. And Chambourcin was another grape that was developed in France, but unlike Vidal, where it's no longer an authorized grape, Chambourcin is actually the most planted hybrid grape in all of France, and it's mostly found in the Loire Valley and the Nantes region. And Chambourcin is a really great red, especially if you're trying to either transition from drinking more whites into drinking some reds, or maybe if you're more on the sweeter wines and you want to try some more of the drier reds, Chambourcin is a really great option for that. The tannins in Chambourcin are very low, so you're not going to have nearly that intensity of just that kind of bitterness in your cheeks or the heaviness of them that you would like a Cabernet, Merlot, Petit Verdot, etc. And especially here in Virginia, I feel like a lot of Chambourcins are really fruit forward, so it kind of makes it even more of a reason to just be an easy drinking wine. Now onto our Chambourcin. This one is estate grown, and it came from the part of the property that is referred to as the steep face, and that's how it got its name. And so steep face is on one of the steepest vineyard slopes in the Commonwealth. And if you've ever seen the steep face, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you ever really want to truly experience the steep face, if during harvest season you want to help to harvest those Chambourcin grapes, I'm sure Lee would be more than happy for some extra help on that hill. And with this vintage, this is from the 2017 vintage. About 40% of the fruit was whole cluster pressed. And then during fermentation, rather than doing punch down, which is punching down the skins and the juice, he did what's referred to as pump over, and that's taking the juice from the bottom of the tank and literally pumping it over the skins. It's a much gentler method of doing so. It was aged then in neutral barrels for about 10 months. And let's give this one a taste. And I love the color of Chambourcin too, because it's kind of that dark, inky, really, certain vintages have more of like a purplish blue hue to it. This one's a little bit lighter. This one's more on kind of the dark ruby side, but definitely always, Chambourcin's probably one of the prettiest ones, I think, of our reds. And it's a really great one too. It is one that can be drank rather young. And, you know, it's not going to be where you necessarily need to decant it or needs time to age. Chambourcins do age fairly well, but they are a really great one to have when they're a younger vintage as well. Getting a lot of red fruit on this, raspberry, cherry, a little bit of jamminess, but not a whole lot. Very much more the ripe fruits. A little bit of tartness as well, and maybe a little bit of like cranberry as well. Get a little bit of tartness to it, and you definitely kind of feel it back in your cheeks a little bit. But again, the tannins are really soft. You know, the alcohol is fairly moderate, and it's just a really great light red to just have, especially during the summer months. I love having this one on hand during the summer, because if I want a dry red, but I don't necessarily want a Petit Verdot or a Cabernet, this is a really great one to kind of reach for as well. All right, guys, so the last red that we have for this episode of Bluestone at Home is going to be our Norton. And this one I did have to do a little bit more research with just because I've not studied Norton as much. And really some of the hybrids I haven't studied as much over the years. But Norton has a very interesting history. And it is actually America's oldest native grape. And Dr. Daniel Norton, is who the grape is actually named after. He cultivated the Norton grape in Richmond, Virginia in the early 1800s and then made it available for commercial purchase in 1830. And at that time, that is when Missouri actually bought some of the vines and the plantings, and it just thrived there, and it is still currently the state grape there today. But in the 1980s, a gentleman named Dennis Horton of Horton Vineyards actually brought the Norton grape back to Virginia, planted it there at Horton Vineyards, and over time the grape has slowly started to increase in the acreage here in Virginia over the years. It's still not like super common here in Virginia, but it has definitely gained more popularity over the years, or not necessarily popularity, but it has, you see it a lot more places now than what you would have 10, 20 years ago. So then we're going to move on to ours. And you may notice it's in a little itty bitty bottle, and that is for good reason. The Norton that we grew on the property, and yes, that is past tense, because in 2019 we actually ripped out the Norton vines. They were right outside here, the tasting room on this little hill here. That block was then replaced with Cabernet Sauvignon grapes, but our Norton grapes have been used solely for our port style dry dock. Now, a little bit about port style. In a lot of the same regards, it's kind of like champagne, that you can't call wine champagne unless it comes from the Champagne region of France. Kind of the same thing with port. With port wines, you cannot call it a port unless it comes from the country of Portugal. Now, the other thing too is that a lot of times, most ports or even port styles are typically on the sweeter side and usually served as desserts, or they're more so just dessert wines. And our port style is very unique in the sense that it is completely dry. So as I mentioned, most port styles are definitely on the sweeter side, but ours is completely dry. And that's one of the reasons why me personally, why I really enjoy this one as well. And this one, Norton is one of those that you really do want to age a little bit before you drink them. And so with this one having close to 6 years old, being 6 years old, it has definitely really softened over the years, and the Norton is definitely able to kind of express itself a little bit more in just a really nice, beautiful form. Definitely get a little bit more kind of that whiskey barrel note on it. I get a lot of nuttiness to this one as well. Kind of some of the dried, like dried fruit, like plums or prunes or things like that. Get a little bit of that on it. Yeah, it has really, really softened. Still has a good little kick to it, and but it has really mellowed out nicely, and it will still age for another few years as well. Oh yeah, I can feel that warmth, getting a little bit of that alcohol now. But this one, you know, you can still do it as an after dinner wine. It still just has that nice kind of sipping quality as far as like just like a nightcap wine or something like that. I really like this one too with some of the like dark chocolates that have a little bit of nuttiness to them, like dark hazelnut chocolate or things like that. But this one, it is a very unique one. It is more of a specialty wine, but this one, having a little bit of age to it, has certainly done it well as well. All right. Well, that is what I have for you guys on this episode of Bluestone at Home. Thanks for tuning in. As always, we hope you guys are safe and well. We look forward to seeing you guys soon. And if you guys are drinking our wines, don't forget to tag us on social media, as well as use the hashtag Bluestone at Home. And until next time, guys, take care. Cheers.